right, here we go. How you doing, Mike? All right. Right off the bat, no sound from Mike. Can you hear me? Of course you can hear me. Why am I not hearing you? Somebody put in the comments if they can hear Mike on the screen. I don't have you muted.
I'm on. I'm all dialed in.
Equipment failure on your end. You buy the beer next time, even though I don't drink. All right. Junior Hockey Advisor.
Perfect.
Here we go. Yay. Junie, yeah, you're right. We're back. Yeah, you all have returned, is what Junie said. And we returned with a bang. Actually, this is episode 4, Junie. Where have you been? We've been here 4 weeks in a row now.
Cruising.
Well, not 4 in a row. 3 in a row. So anyway, listen, tonight we're going to have some fun. If you haven't been involved with this before, I'm Jeff. That's Mike Bloom. We are involved in hockey at the junior level. We do this to help you understand junior hockey. Usually our Wednesdays are solely talking about the leagues, the players, the coaches. We've kind of hybrided this a little bit over the last few weeks just because the season's getting up and running, and we didn't want to inundate you with 2 different live streams, this early in the year. We'll get to the point where we do a Sunday, Monday, and a Wednesday, and we'll have some fun with it, but we're just not going to do it this early in the year. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the hot topic that's been on the discussion board. If you're not a part of our discussion board, I don't know how you got here, but if you're not involved with it, Junior Hockey Advisor, we have a discussion board on Facebook, Junior Hockey Advisor discussion group. And one of the hot topics this week and a lot of questions surrounding trades. And it's a great time to bring up the discussion on trades because that's what happens this time of year. This is the big flurry. I mean, they happen all year till the trade deadline. However, right now is it's significant, and it changes things not only for a player but for a family, for a team. I mean, you get into so many different dynamics on this because the billet families get involved. There's so many different areas that this affects. So we want to discuss it a little bit tonight. We want to talk about that. But Mike, tell me first before we get rolling. What'd you do in hockey this week? Because you have got more irons in the fire lately with hockey than anybody I know. So what's going on?
Well, from my own standpoint of the teams that I coach and whatnot, we're off to our normal practice schedules. I'm doing on ice
training. You're
training.
Coaching 2 teams?
2 teams,
Okay.
AA, U18, and U16 team. We were just in Central Illinois this past weekend. Which is in the middle of nowhere, literally driving through cornfields to get to the rink.
Herndbrat's rink?
We were actually further in the boonies than where he's at, probably
Gotcha.
by about 35 minutes. So
Gotcha. Okay.
He's talking about Illinois State University and Bloomington area. We were actually closer to Peoria.
Gotcha. Okay.
The town most people aren't going to be familiar with. So just there for the week. And then Monday through Thursday, I do on-ice training for it's called the Elite Hockey School. It's basically a hockey academy that a lot of people are familiar with. So working with those guys for an hour each day. Then we had a league meeting today for the league that I coach within, just to talk about the future and different things that are coming down the pipeline. And then obviously from the junior side of things, already had probably 3 or 4 calls this week with different kids that we as a staff are interested in, that our scouts have kind of identified as players, or I personally had. And, just talking to them about what we liked about them, getting a gauge of where they're looking to go next year, if they're considering the North American League, or if they're, some of them are still potential USHL guys, and some may look to the Canadian Junior League. So just trying to get a feel for some of these kids early on and maybe get some down to skate with us and things like that. So it never ends. I mean, there's so many different things that we're doing through, and even talking trades and different players that have kind of trickled down from USHL or the NA. There's just a lot of conversation going on right now, especially at the junior level, because roster decisions are having to be made and protected lists are having to be submitted to leagues, and there's players that have been left off those lists for different teams, and trying to help guide some of the ones that I know on different places that might have openings, and reach out to different people and reach out to them and kind of calm them down a little bit. So the topic that we're talking about is it's important, but it's also, this is the moment where it's needs to be talked about because a lot of people are experiencing it right now.
Note to self, when asking Mike to discuss a topic, give him time limit of 30 seconds. Okay, got that down for next time. Okay, I want to start this from two different perspectives. Mike, first, maybe in 30 to 40 seconds, break down a little bit about the trickle-down effect and how it goes from Tier 1 to Tier 2 to Tier 3. Maybe talk a little bit about some deadlines. Maybe talk about some roster sizes. We're going to talk mostly about Tier 3 in this discussion tonight, and we're going to talk a lot about the different ramifications and pluses and minuses and some of the pitfalls and some of the procedural things you might want to think about as a parent or a player, maybe even as a coach, because we got a ton of coaches on here too, Tier 3 coaches, so Tier 3 owners, Tier 3 GMs. So let's start with that. You kind of break down a little bit and talk about the effect and how things work.
Well, of course, the trickle down is going to start at the top. So the USHL is going to be the team that, or the league that is going to start this whole process. So the way it's set up is they are the first league that has to get their roster set. And then once all of those USHL teams have their roster set, that's when the trickle down occurs. So then all of those kids that don't make that USHL program, they can either go back to midget depending on their age, or they can go to a team in the North American League if they're already an asset from one of those teams, or they could be free agents. And now they have the opportunity of deciding which league and team would I want to go to. Right. And that's where a lot of conversations start happening with advisors and, college coaches and things like that.
Yep. Thank you. One of the things about this is there's a lag sometimes. If a kid is a free agent coming out of the BCHL, is a free agent coming out of the USHL, they might shop their own league first. So they might actually go and skate for 3 days over here, 2 days over there. They might have a couple conversations, and it might take them a week, to get over the shock, because sometimes these are veteran players that have no home, so they shop their league first. Once they've shopped their league, which may take a week, that's also the settle down period of, okay, I really don't know what I'm doing. Then they might shop into the next level, which is the null. And BCHL, no, same level as far as all practical senses. You can argue what style, but you can't argue production and stats. So let's just call a spade on that. But once they've decided they can go to the null, now that clock starts all over again. So they could start calling null teams, and at the same time, null teams could be calling them. So you've got this dance that goes on. It's not an immediate, I get cut, phone rings, I pick it up and go, sure, I'll be in Lone Star tomorrow. I'm flying to Dallas tomorrow. I'm driving to Dallas tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. It might start out, I remember my son Adam had a teammate, this is back when he was in juniors, that literally spent probably 3 weeks, made a tour of the null. He was a captain of New Mexico, I think, at the time. He asked for a trade. They said no. They just cut him, made him a free agent. It wasn't malicious. They liked each other, but he knew where he was at with that team. He wanted a different role. So he literally, I think he zigzagged the nation and ended up making his rounds all the way around, and then ended up in Shreveport after probably skating with 4 or 5 different null teams. So that lag happens. It's not naturally just, okay, here's the USHL cut date. Okay, we'll expect all those kids tomorrow that trickle down, and then the cuts from the null will trickle down to all the different leagues that could possibly pick them up. It's not that clean. It's a little bit of a long, elongated process. So, and there's a shock value to being traded at whatever level, from the NHL on down. There's a shock value of being traded. Do you think I should tell the story I told you a little bit earlier today to kind of start off with a little storytelling on the process?
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was a great example, and it's something that people can relate with.
Yeah. So one of my kids was playing in the AJHL, first year out of U18, rookie up there, and he was with a really good program. He was with Camrose. Camrose at the time, always a top 2, top 3 in their division. very well coached. Everything you want was lined up the right way. Everybody was happy with the situation. He was so proud of himself. He drove his car out there. This was his big, move for autonomy. He's a high school graduate now. He gets out there and he starts playing, and he really starts off strong. He starts out and he put himself up he was scoring goals. I think in the first 8 games as a defenseman, he had 4 goals, 4 assists, something like that. But he really popped out of the gate strong. But he started getting frustrated, and he got frustrated with the fact that they had a rotation of rookies. Now, you all know I'm in the business. My wife is very pragmatic. She's very smart. She's been around this long enough too to understand how this all works. And we let him make his own decisions. We've always let him make his decisions when it comes to hockey. Now, we try to guide him, but he said, I should go talk to the coach. And I said, okay, Adam, if you go talk to the coach, here's the pluses, here's the minuses, here's the best case scenario you're going to get is he goes, Adam, you're right. You need more ice time. You don't need to be sitting in the stands with the rotation of the other rookies. Okay? Didn't want to hear that. The bad side, Adam, is the negative on this is he could say, Adam, screw you. We're going to sit you in the stands a lot more. Or he could say, you know what? We just don't want you now because you don't want to be a part of the system. Now, as a dad, I hear my son. I gave him advice, but I also know from a coaching side and the GM of doing this for 30 plus years that the coach has got his own way of doing things. There was nothing malicious in what he was doing. He had set this up before the season started and told everybody how it was going to play out. My son still went in for the meeting. He couldn't help himself. He goes in for the meeting. The coach goes, oh, yeah, it's an ice time issue. I get it. You want more ice time? End of the week, Adam's traded to the last place team. Got his more ice time, but it came at a cost. It came at a cost of being a team that was highly exposed, well connected in the Division I ranks, to a team that had a coach that had never talked to a Division I, was intimidated to talk to a Division I program, wouldn't pick up the phone and call a program if his life depended on it. So it happens to everybody. It is not something that, don't feel like, you're singled out as the only one being traded if it happens to you. Number 2, you can give kids all the advice in the world, and they're still going to do things when they're autonomous, when they're out by themselves. Even though you think you give them sage advice, they're going to go and do, sorry about that. They're going to do things that just don't make sense. I can tell you in our situation, it paid off for him in the long run, because within days after the trade, he looked at junior hockey completely different. He started understanding it was a business. He understood that he had to fall in line. He had to comply. So many good things came out of it, except for the fact that, in a sense, not across the board, but in one sense, he lost out on a lot of opportunities to be exposed because he played on a team that just wasn't, I think they won a handful of games the whole time he was there. So I only bring that up to share that, you have to be careful what you ask for in junior hockey. It doesn't matter if that's tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, because it is a business. And if they feel they've got an employee, and let's just use that word, it's not really an employee, but if there's a manager and there's an employee, it's just like the real world. If you go in and say, I don't like my hours, I don't like my job, I don't like my coworkers, you need to put me in a different department, all the things you could ask for, there's going to be a point where the manager goes, this isn't just going to work out for us. This isn't a good situation. Luckily, that was the one time he ever asked for a trade. Now, in retrospect, he was traded 4 times. We've kind of hit the gamut of different things that could happen. The next time, and this is something you all have to pay attention to. This is extremely important. Advisors can be your worst enemy when it comes to your team. And you think, whoa, what did he just say? Why would he say that? Advisors can be your worst enemy. They think they're doing the right thing, and they do the exact same thing my son did, but they did it thinking they were advocating for you or the player, okay? Unbeknownst to us, he was a Null player at the time. Unbeknownst to us, the advisor was pressuring the coach to make a decision to get more ice time, to put him in more of a leadership role. Now, he had a couple players on the team, so it wasn't just one player who's doing this. What he's doing with the several players. And this advisor is pressing, and we find out after the fact that he's doing this with numerous teams in numerous leagues. And he ended up being a guy that's just not respected in the industry at this point. But we didn't know that at the time. We found out that this guy had put a pool of his players together and was threatening a boycott with these players without any of the players knowing that this was going on. And so within a course of 3 weeks, all the players that advisor was mentioning in his breath got traded. They got traded across the board. And so it's one of those things where make sure you put the stops on when you sit down with your advisor or you sit down and have a discussion with the advisor. You don't want him reaching out to anybody unless you know about it, that you are aware of it. Now he's on the phone with, your advisor's on the phone with the University of Michigan. They go, hey, aren't you representing Billy Bob? And your advisor goes, why, yes. He doesn't go, hang on a second. Let me call the parent and ask if I can talk to you. No, there's within reason. You want him to say, yeah, and he's great. That's the good thing. But you just can't have them going off and making decisions for you off the handle or for their own personal power play. So it's very important on that sense. So I went a little bit more in detail than I thought I was going. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I love the story of how Adam was when he first got to juniors, because I think this applies to a lot of kids when they've been playing, youth hockey their whole life. Because essentially when you play youth hockey, let's just say the team's going to have 20 kids on the roster. You're basically one of 20 at that point. So no matter what you're playing, it's a matter of how much ice time you're getting is kind of how that's distributed. But at the same time, when you get to juniors, you might be one of 24, 25, sometimes 30 players on that roster where you may be in and out, or you may be out more than you're in. And in some cases, that's based on age. It's based on how that team kind of handles someone that's younger. It could be based on performance. There's a lot of things that would cause that. But this is their first chance of having that experience, and every kid wants to play. They don't want to be in the stands, but every team is going to have kids in the stands. And how do you handle that is a big piece of all of this.
Yeah. And every situation is different. I can just say in this situation, the coach and the general manager, as part of the recruiting process, we had gone up as a family in the spring before the season, visited, Alberta and made it a nice little trip. And he sat us down and said, look, you're going to be in a rotation with the other rookies. We are going to sit you. You'll have to know that that's going to happen. So it wasn't a surprise, but what you want to hear and what you hear as a young player are completely different. We agreed to it. He agreed to it, right up front. Yeah, I can live with that. He was so excited about playing in that league. He was so excited to get rolling that kind of just, went over his head. I don't know if it would have changed his decision to play there or not. I don't think it would. I think he would have still gone to that team. He really, really liked the whole picture, especially the fact that right next to where he lived, his billet house, like a quarter mile down the street, there was a hotel that had a casino about the size of my office here, and they could drink it at 18 years old. So all the things we didn't find out about all this until later as parents,
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, this applies too, because as we talk about the trickle down, what can happen is a couple guys fall down from the USHL and you have a player that's in the null. Well, he may have been a second or third liner in Blaine just a few weekends ago, and now could be in and out of the lineup, could be just hanging out on the fourth line now, because some guys kind of parachuted in at the last minute, or he could be completely off the team. And that happens as well. When you're talking about the guys that are kind of falling down, and then the next step is, is this player going to walk in and ask for a trade? Is this player, going to kind of continue to work through it to where he gets a better footing on the current team that he has? These are all scenarios that are going to play themselves out for these different kids, and having some ideas that this could happen ahead of being actually in the situation could help. Like you talking to Adam hadn't had that experience before. You had, because you had coached and ran teams and even was a player at one point before. So you kind of knew.
I like how you throw that in last. Yeah, and somewhere way back. Yeah.
Kind of a player.
You might have played, So
that was back before they knew how to bend their sticks, though, right?
Oh, I knew how to bend my stick. I had a Titan. I played with a Titan. Then I moved from a Titan to the Sherwood PMP 5030, which the coffee model that had a hook on that baby like that. Baby, you could just snap the wrist and you could knock pigeons out of the sky. That thing was so
You
accurate.
must have had a couple trees in the backyard for that many sticks.
Oh man, I tell you what, I would go back to wooden. I wish that they did it like I wish the NHL did it like Major League Baseball. You can use synthetic, you can use aluminum, you can use carbon fiber anywhere else. When you play Major League, you're using wood, and that gives it a consistency across the board. I think the game would be a better game. I think we're going $450 for sticks now.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's a different topic. That's a different topic.
But I know we're getting off. So a couple questions came in while we're talking. And Bradley asked the question: how much did it cost to play that season? I'm assuming that you're asking about the AJ. Didn't cost a thing. The COVID situation changed things. The economy in Canada and the U.S. has changed things. But at the time, the AJ was running free hockey. I believe a lot of the teams still are, or it's discounted hockey, free sticks, free everything was taken care of. And then we paid for the billet fee, and the billet fee, was nominal, probably $200-300, I think. This is 5 years ago, so things obviously could have changed by then. Junie asked the question: there isn't a lot of 17-year-olds in the NAW? We'll get to that, Junie. I'm not where that's going at, but okay, yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of 17-year-olds. There probably won't be. That's just the way the league is designed. There are teams that are trying to get younger. We always say we're going to get younger. We did get younger this year with our drafts and with our tenders. We did a good job of trying to bring that age down a little bit. But at the bottom of the line, you got to win games. Somebody brought the discussion up on another social media site. What's more important, winning games or development? This is a business. Okay, this is a business. At Tier 3, you can make the decision of always being a development program. If you're kicking players up and moving players to the next level, wins aren't as important, and you'll see teams that are 500 teams that consistently stay there because they're only worried about pumping up. In fact, we've had a team in the NAL was like that took much younger players all the time. Was it Janesville that's had that reputation? Yeah, Janesville. They always take younger players. They usually have the league average. You can look up on Elite Prospects. They're usually one of the younger teams, and they've got a reputation of pumping players out quick and in high-end quality players, and then they just start over again. So I'm not saying that Janesville looks at the world as we're not going to win games, but I definitely know that their development side is probably up a little higher than the win side compared to the rest of the teams in the NAL. And that's one man's opinion. That could be very subjective, but that's the way I see their rosters. Mike, you probably agree with that, maybe not.
Yeah, I think they enjoy moving a player onto the USHL most, is promoting their program. Obviously winning would be great, but I think you have more control over the advancement of players into the USHL than you do being the only winner of that league, every year. It's so competitive.
I agree. Bradley, I'm not really sure what you're asking there, but what if it was pay to play? I'm not sure if you're talking about the scenario I was talking about. Mike, does that make sense to you on how to answer that?
Yeah, maybe just how would you handle not getting ice time or how to handle if you were in a rotation and you're
if that's the case, then Matthew's already on this, and Matthew says, what about money paid and you end up being traded? Sorry if I missed it, but it was already if it was already talked about. No, you're right on cue. It sounds like everybody's going down the money path. Tier 3 situation, and this could be Canadian juniors too, CJHL players that pay. The USA hockey teams, meaning NA3 teams, have a different set of bylaws than, of course, the EHL and, of course, the USPHL and the Premier and the elite divisions they have in the CJHL. Now, the CJHL teams and the NA3HL fall under governing bodies. One is Hockey Canada, the other one's USA Hockey. In those situations, you can go directly to the USA Hockey website, for example. You can look up player bylaws, and it gives you exactly the player's bill of rights, what you can expect from a junior team, and it also gives you a schedule of what type of money you should receive back at what period. So if you basically you're looking at pay to play. If you used a third of a season now, don't quote me exactly on the breakdown, but this is an example. If you played a third of the season, you're going to not get back a third of your money. And there's a certain point, and I would have to look all this up. I haven't looked it up in a few years. There's a certain point in the year that, all bets are off. If you leave that team after that point, the team doesn't owe you any money back. And once again, I'm so sorry, folks. I just got a frog in my throat. But you can see all that on the USA Hockey website. Hockey Canada does the same thing, and you can get the information. You don't have to rely on the team. If you're in the EHL and if you're in the USPHL Premier, they've got a whole different set of rules, and they're not as consumer friendly. And I really can't speak for the AHL because I haven't looked at their bylaws in a while. But the player contracts and the rules for the USPHL are different. They're set up different. They're structured different, and they're run more like basically a private entity. They're not open, and it's not as transparent on what they're doing. So I hope that it helped a little bit. Matt, you said it's so basically it's prorated. You can say it's prorated to an extent, but it's not. The prorated period doesn't match the length of the season. So instead of saying prorated, there's probably a better term for it because, and I don't know what that date is, and I don't have time to look it up while we're live right now. But let's say the cutoff date is December 31st. If you play after December 31st, and I'm making this up, it might be right. It could be right, but I got 1 out of a 365-day chance that I picked the right day. But December 31st, if that's the cutoff, then you still have January, February, March, April, and however long the team goes into playoffs. There's 4 more months there that you don't get compensated for. So it just doesn't match perfectly. There is absolutely a fairness to it, and fairness is subjective. Teams have to pay for their season. If you decide to quit, or if you get traded, usually here's the way it works in a lot of trades at Tier 3. If 2 teams trade off and the players, are coming in and out, there's no money exchange. You don't have to worry about it because you're going to another team in the league. So there's no need to worry about that. It's when you're traded out of the situation, or you quit, or you're kicked off a team, that's more of an issue with that refund. Most of the time, you're not worried about that. You're worried about going, apples for apples on a trade with another team in the league. You don't have to worry about the money situation. So hope that helps. Maybe we were taking you down a little different road there. So let's see what else is being asked. Curious if you would have been okay with the trades of your son if you put out $10K or so. Boy, I guess I can answer it this way. I had to trade a one of my billets that lived in our house when I was a junior owner and GM. I had a billet that was living in our house that we had to trade. It was a 4-play, and like I just explained, he was paying us at the time $8-10K, whatever our program was. We didn't worry about that. We found him a good home. We made the trade. As a billet, it was excruciatingly painful because I've been talking about the trade with the other side for a few days, and then I got to sit at dinner with him every night knowing that there's a possibility that he'll be a part of a trade. And then when we disclosed the trade to him, we gave him the option that, do you want to stay or would you like to be traded? He said, yeah, it's good move for everybody. So once again, that money doesn't come into play. I guess it would if I were a parent and it sent my kid to a situation that the billeting situation was worse, the coaching situation was worse. Yeah, it would bother me. And honestly, that bothers anybody that gets traded to a worse situation. That doesn't have anything to do with the money. That has to do with, man, we had such a great billet situation. We had such a great coaching staff. The dynamics in the locker room were good, but our number one goalie broke his leg and we had to make a trade. And, you've probably heard me tell the story before. The trade situation, it happens to everybody. My nephew, 6'4", 220 as a player, number one overall draft pick in the USHL the year that he went to the USHL. He won 2 back-to-back national titles at 16s and 18s as the leading scorer. Now, if there's a kid out there you'd think that every team wanted, absolutely. But what happened was he became more of a commodity than he was a player. Before the first game even happened, he was traded for a goalie because they had a goalie issue. Now, the next team got him and went, holy smokes, we got something we can get 3 players for. So he was traded again for 3 players. He got traded 4 times before the Christmas break. And that's not kidding. And he had a handful of games played. He ended up, his college team said, no, we're not going to deal with this. And they allowed him to come in at the semester break and just start skating with the team. And he redshirted that first semester and then played the next year. But, it happens to everybody. This is not a situation where it's just tier 3 or those problems about, getting traded. I think the money part of it is important, but if I'm getting traded inside the league, I'm not paying more or less unless there's a different billet fee at the other team. And it could be more or less on that side. So I don't really have the same view on this as that I'm losing money, but it also, remember, this is a two-way street on this. In most situations, when the trade happened, something very positive came out of it. With my nephew, after 4 trades, he ended up getting into the school that he committed to early, and he got his college hockey career started early. That was phenomenal. That was great for him. So at 18, he had a lot of junior experience moving around, but he got to move on. And in my youngest son's situation, he grew up a lot with all this. This all made him start looking at the game differently and appreciating what teams had. And it wasn't the end of the trades. In that same year, he got moved again. Once again, it was because a team needed, they lost their power play specialist. They needed a guy to come in and run the power play until the other guy got healthy again. Once he got healthy, it was like there was no fit anymore. You only need one guy like that. You don't need 2. And, it depends on how you build the dynamics of the team. So it happens all over the place. I know I didn't answer that as clearly as some of you wanted, but I'm looking at some of the comments here. If you pay one billet family and get traded, does the money roll over to the new family? And usually in the billet situations, they give you a check right when you're walking out the door to make up the difference. At least in our situations, the billets were always extremely good about it. And in our situations, if it was a really good family and we were 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in, we're like, hey, look, keep the money. We're not interested in the, nickel and dime in here. You've done so much for our kid. We didn't fight it. Now, if it was like in the first week and there was one billet family we just didn't, we could care less about. They were a billet factory. I think I've told the story before. The kids woke up in the morning. There was 6 of them in the house. A huge house. Wasn't an issue. They had plenty of room. There was only at max 2 kids to a bedroom. But they had a big, vat of porridge in the morning or gruel. I think it was oatmeal, whatever it was. That was the breakfast. So you could go and dip a ladle, fill it up, put a little, brown sugar or cinnamon on it. And at lunch, there was no lunch because they went to with the team, so they didn't get any lunch at all. They did not supply any sodas or Powerades or you had water, milk, and Kool-Aid were the drinks. In the evening, it was a big vat of some kind of pasta, and it was economy built. There was usually no meat. It was involved in it, and it was a horrible situation. But they collected those checks, and we'll leave it at that. I don't want to get into too much detail. I want to get off. So that's the billet side. So let's see if there's any other questions. Mike, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, I think it becomes a lot more tricky at the tier 3 level. And we still, as we talk about the trickle down effect, we're still working our way from, in our example, the NA. Once the NA sets, their protected list, then the kids that are going to drop down, sometimes they don't necessarily drop down to the tier 3 immediately. Like you said, they're going to try to find other spots within the league. They may look at, in this case, if we're talking the NA, the NCDC, they'll look at some other options. But when you get to tier 3, they typically have much larger rosters. Even once they get to a cut down, there's more spots. You could be talking about 30 spots at that point. and you're dressing 20, 21 guys. So, in some cases, when you're talking about paying 10 grand or whatever, you could be paying 10 grand and barely see any playing time,
Right.
because now you're further on the outside. And, I know there's some kids that I had coached that are in tier 3 right now. And, a month ago, they were one of maybe 14 forwards. And now they're one of 19 forwards as guys have started to come down from other leagues. And, who knows how the dust is going to settle when it comes to all of that. But that's the reality of the situation we're all in. The dust hasn't settled yet on where these kids are going to end up. And you got to try to navigate your way through that. And I think that's complicated from the player perspective, and then also from the parent, because at tier 3, you're paying money.
So while we're on that money subject, and I scan maybe once a month, I scan the other social sites that are doing relative same things. It's usually advisors that have sites, and they try to come off as unbiased opinions. Okay. There are several advisors out there that will tell you, I can get you a free spot in junior tier 3 hockey, or you don't even have to pay me as an advisor. The team will take care of me. Okay. First of all, I'm not telling you what to do, because in a lot of situations, you'll never get caught if you decide to go down this road. However, the NCAA rules on this is, if a discount in junior hockey is offered to a player, any player on that team, that discount has to be offered across the board. So technically, what that's saying is there should never be a situation where there's a free player on the team, because if he's offered a free spot, everybody on the team's got to be offered a free spot. Now, there are some tier 3 teams from time to time over the last 20 years that have gone tuition free, and they don't last long, but they try it. They think they're going to make it up in advertising on the boards and advertising in their program and fans, and they're going to make it up at tier 3. It doesn't happen. They go away. But if you get a chance to take advantage of that, that's great. No problem. So if a team offers you a spot for $1,000 less, just know that you are in violation of an NCAA rule. At tier 3, I don't know in the last 5 years if I've heard of anybody being investigated for that, okay, across the board. But just know you'll take the brunt of the hit, not the advisor or not the team. You'll take the hit, because the only thing they have control over, they don't have control over that advisor. There is no tie between the NCAA and advisors. There is no tie between the junior tier 3 operators and the NCAA. They only have their hooks into you. You'll pay the price. Now, once again, I'm being very clear. I don't know of any violations that have been pursued. I've had, my wife, being an attorney, has a friend in the Buffalo market that is married to one of the NCAA, I don't even know what her title is, but in casual conversation, I brought it up one time at a social function, and she goes, we no. We've got so much going on in Division I football, Division I basketball. No, we're not tracking down tier 3 junior hockey players. So don't take that as from the horse's mouth. Take that for what it is. I'm just giving you the insight on that. If an advisor says that you don't have to pay them, that is explicit breaking of the rules. You have to compensate that advisor directly at a fair wage. And if you're a Division I player and this guy does that, you really could be, called the carpet. And that has happened numerous times in the last 5 years. I can cite four to six examples, at least five examples in my head of players that have had that situation come up where the advisor, because then all of a sudden you become a pro. You're not paying that advisor. He's getting compensated from somebody else for what you do, either from the team or from somebody else. So if you're a pay-to-play tier 3 player and the team, your advisor says, I got you home, you just pay the team. And the team gives him a cutback of $3,000 and you did not compensate him directly, you're in violation. So just be careful with that. I'm not saying that, don't take that deal. That's up to you. At tier 3, I think you're a lot safer. If you're at tier 1, if you're at you're going Division I and you make a deal with an advisor like that, I think you really have to rethink that, and you might want to get sage advice from another advisor before you take that deal. So that's Mike. You got anything to add to that?
No, not to that. I think you summed it up well.
You don't want to touch it. You don't want to go on
No,
record on that one.
I'm good.
Okay. Uh, let's see. Hey, you got to be more specific, Matt. Who's more of a wealth of knowledge? That side or that side? Because it's important to me to know, if Bloomer's pulling his weight here.
You
Um,
have way more experience in this than I do, so you are the wealth of knowledge.
just on
I'm
this
just
topic, in fact, we talked about this earlier today. You said, "Hey, look, I'm going to take a little more of a back seat. This is more of your lane." So, um, the other things too. Remember, requesting a trade could be positive. I mean, if you really got such a bad situation with a team and you request a trade and you get traded, you can, and a lot of times because kids, social media, they talk to each other. You have friends on other teams. Players can get a sense of what teams out there need players, which of their buddies are really liking a situation, and they kind of compare things when they're talking in social media, and they can say, "Oh man, come over and play with us. Our situation's better here. Coach is a great guy. We do film sessions once a day. We've got this. We've got this. He cooks us steaks once a week. Whatever." Yeah, they can do a little of that homework. So if you go in and request a trade, a lot of times you can say, hey, look, here's what I'm looking for, and is it possible I can go to this team? Now, once again, if we're talking about reasonable adults in the room, a lot of times coaches will try to accommodate as much as they can. Now, a team that's short on players, if I want to request a trade and I know that team over there is short of players, it may not be a situation where I can get traded there because they don't have anything to give back. At Tier 3, draft picks and tenders don't mean the same thing they do at Tier 2 and Tier 1. So you're not in a situation a lot of times where there's, you're getting quid pro quo, you're getting tit for tat, whatever other one you want to use out there. So you got to be careful of understanding a little bit of the layout. Now, a reasonable coach will try to work with you. They're not trying to, once again, reasonable, mature. Not all of these things always happen. Remember, Tier 3 coaches are usually in it because they want to coach. They don't carry the same level of experience as a lot of time even as a U18 coach. Some do, but they're trying to build a resume and move up the ladder. Now, you get some programs that you get Tier 3 coaches that have been there 5-8 years. They're doing a great job. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a new coach, a lot of the things that you're dealing with is either a first time or a limited amount of experience in that area. So you're not going to get a clean cut. You go into a null coach that's been around for 15 years and he's got to do a trade. He can do it while he's showering. He's on the phone and he's shaving at the same time because it's so ingrained. They know what they're doing. They know what they're looking for. They know the process. They know how to handle the player. They know how to handle the billets. It's just all procedural. You get into a Tier 3 team that doesn't trade a lot, or you got a coach that this is a first time around, or a GM that struggles with it because they don't do it very often. Now you're in a different situation. Now you're in a situation where they might stumble and bumble and make mistakes. That's why when you go through this process of picking a team, you try your best to pick a team that is experienced and has a coaching staff that knows that. You can ask these questions before the season starts. Before you sign a contract with a team, you can say, hey, look, in case it ever comes up, how often do players get traded here? Can I go somewhere? Is there a list of, and a lot of times they'll say, yeah, you can look at our roster. Here's what we started with. Here's what, you can go to Elite Prospects. A lot of times you'll see a roster that's got 40 players and you go, why do they got 40 players? Well, some guys only have 2 games, 3 games. And if you click on the player, you'll see he's moved on to some other team now. He'll show up on another team somewhere. So a lot of times the more homework you do before you make the decisions helps. Now, that doesn't answer the question of what you do if the season's already started, Jeff. I'm already in that situation. I can't help you there except for giving you some sage advice on, hey, look, unless you're at a 10 on that meter of, good and 10 is bad, and you're pulsing over here on things going really bad, I think that's the time when you might sit down and ask for a trade. I would do everything possible not to be traded if I were in a situation like that at this point. I mean, sans any abuse, sans any, dark deeds, whatever dark deeds are, money, transactions, back deals with players. I don't know. if that stuff's not going on, I'd try to weather the storm for the year and then try to get to the next year. The only difference is players in their last year. If you're in your last year of juniors and things aren't looking good at the beginning of the year, it is the time to start looking right away. The last resort is quitting. Then we kick into that mode of worried about the prorated chart, we're talking about with money. But that's the last resort. You don't want to quit, especially as a young junior. You don't want to quit a team. That's a last resort. And the reason you don't want to quit a team is because, it might not be on paper, but it gets in the circles. You get questioned. Every team you go to, why'd you quit there? Why'd you quit? And then if anything God forbid anything happens again with a team where you get in a real bad situation, now you become a problem. And it's perceived. It might not be real. It's a perceived problem. And that happens with trades. One trade on your resume, that happens. 2 trades, you better start explaining what's going on. You better, why did you get traded again? Now, a lot of players can, explain, hey, look, goalie broke his leg. We needed another goalie. I was a player they could move to get a quality goalie in. That's what happened. You can usually walk through the process with the college coach or the higher level junior coach, but the questions will be asked about that. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that is I think people think that trades are easier to actually happen or like to manufacture a trade than they really are. I know that, during this whole kind of trickle down phase, anytime like the team within the NA, because that's where, we work, when they get put out to the wire as if, hey, we have this player and we
explain what the wire means first, Mike, so everybody understands what that means.
The wire basically is just it's communication amongst the leagues amongst the league to all the teams that there's a player that they're either looking to trade or might become available. So if you're interested, you can reach out and offer whatever it is to acquire that player for your team. The amount of players that are offered up through the wire that actually get traded for is very few compared to the total amount that had been put through the wire. So, a lot of times because of, again, I don't want to toot our own horn, but because Lone Star is always one of the top programs in the NA, a lot of kids, when they ask for a trade, they want to go to Lone Star because it's like, hey, you got a chance to win and they advance their players to D1. That's where I want to go. And it's like, we'll ask, okay, well, what are you looking for? And they're like, yeah, we want a first rounder. We want 2 tenders or something. And we're like, what the hell? Like, there's no way we would offer, we would give something like that, especially if the kid is going to be like a 3rd, 4th liner for us. It's like their perception of what they want back doesn't meet the value of the player, as bad as that sounds when you're talking about a kid. But that's why it's hard to make trades, because a kid could say, hey, I want to get traded to this team. Well, if your team is asking far too much than what that team is willing to offer, or that team feels as though maybe they do have a short bench, but They really like the players they have, they don't want to bring somebody else in, or they know we got a couple guys injured that are going to come back, or, something deeper than what you can see just looking off elite prospects or whatever, that these trades are not always easy to happen, to actually connect the dots on. And in some cases you may say, hey, I want to get traded. Your team may say, hey, we're trying to work a trade for the couple teams you gave us that you'd want to go to. We just can't make it work. But, hey, we're going to end up trading you to this team because it does work. Well, that might not have been your choice either. But because you said you wanted to be traded, now, you're up to the mercy of what that team's going to do.
Yep. Yeah, spot on. Hey, listen, if you got any questions, this is the time to throw the questions out. We've been going now for quite a while. We had a great audience tonight, but we're pulling up on the 1 hour. We got 10 minutes left before we hit the 1 hour mark. I do want to say, let's do a commercial right now. We don't ask for much here. We give everything to you. We pour our heart out to you with honesty, unbiased opinions. If you haven't gone over to Junior Hockey Advisor on YouTube yet and subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do. We're just on the cusp of pushing that over 1,000. And that changes all of our algorithms. It also makes it so it's monetized, meaning we get a penny a month or whatever it kicks back to us. But it does move us in the right direction. So take a time out right now. I'll have Mike talk again so you can take a break get at least a minute, jump over to your YouTube page, go to Junior Hockey Advisor on the YouTube page and subscribe. And there's a ton of good information there. Not everything that is on our Facebook page, not everything that's on our Facebook page. How do I want to say this? There's more stuff on the Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube page than shows up on our Facebook page. So it's easy to navigate. There's a lot of good information there. We'd love to see you jump over there and subscribe. It would help us. Yeah, and Matt, I know we don't do a good enough job of telling. Hit the like button. Yes, hit the like button too, but the subscription is huge to us. It doesn't matter much in your life, but for us, I have mouths to feed. Mike, he's married now. We have mortgages. I don't have a mortgage. You might have one. We got all these things that we got to take care of. Please help us out. I feel like I'm Jerry Lewis right now, and I should have pictures of like starving Ugandans in the background walking through barren fields. We need puppy, a skinny little puppy in my hands here. Help us, please. Yeah.
I think whenever we share that information, we're preaching to the choir for those who are live streaming with us. So, aside from yourself going in and clicking the like button or subscribing, share it with the other hockey families that you play with, because a lot of them struggle with the same questions and scenarios that we always are talking about together. And, they need help too. And a lot of times you guys are being selfish by not sharing that.
I couldn't have said it better, Mike. I couldn't have said it better, but I did just check our YouTube page, and it's going crazy right now. The numbers are flying over there. Now, remember, this is a good audience. We've got one of our bigger audiences of the year because every time we start off in the beginning of the year, we got to build the audience again, and then at the end of the year, they all get sick of us, and then we pick up an audience again in the fall. They listen to us for a few months, they love us. The season ends, they get sick of us. We got to start up and build another audience. So please jump on. Let's see if there's any questions coming in. Corey says, I don't miss out on the days of trying to get a complicated trade done in the null and the NA3. Subscribed. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Corey. Love you. Appreciate that comment. Appreciate that. Matt just wants to remind everybody there's a ton of great videos on YouTube, and on our site there's good videos too. There's great videos on YouTube. There's good videos on our site too. Thank you for bringing that up. Dean wants to throw out a little congratulations to a first-time player. He says, thank you guys. Shout out to our friend Cross, who played number 74, playing in the preseason game 6 for the Red Wings. Congratulations there. That is very, very cool. So
yeah,
good
he's
to hear.
A stud.
Yeah, good to hear. And that's awesome. That's just really, really good to hear. So everybody.
Dallas area kid.
What's that?
Cross was a Dallas area kid. Went up and played in the WHL, played in the USHL for the COVID year, and I think he played in Grand Rapids last year in the AHL. He's definitely a prospect in the future for the Wings.
Yeah, and the Wings do a very, very good job with the prospects. Oh, listen, things are slowing down on the questions. The night is coming to an end here. We will see you next week. Just giving you a little bit of heads up, we've got 2 more episodes that we'll do live, 2 or 3 more weeks of live, and then I will be in Europe for hockey-related reasons, all hockey. And
scouting.
Scouting, yeah. But my wife and I are going on a river cruise, starting out in Budapest and going through all the German cities, and then ended up in Vienna and Amsterdam and all that stuff. So looking forward to it. We're going to have fun. But we'll do 3 more live episodes. Remember, make sure you share this. If you want to do anything that helps us out a lot, find one of your hockey friends and say, check out this, and send it over to them. You grab it off of YouTube, grab it off of Facebook, send them, have them watch it, give it to your leagues, give it to your coach, give it to other players, other families. This information is usually pretty good, unbiased information, and we'd love you to help us grow this. We're doing a great job of growing our community. It's fabulous how many people are involved now, but we can always use more help. And since you're minions that are buying into listening to this, please help us. Mike, anything else?
Hey, great job. I'm glad you did your hair for this episode. That is always helpful.
It's no, here's what happens. I know it's mad science, but I changed my studio, not completely, but I turned my desks a little bit, and I didn't change the lighting in here. So now the lighting's coming straight down, and it looks like I'm completely bald now. And if I turned off those lights, my hair looks normal again. So remember that Seinfeld episode where he was dating that woman? What's that?
Was it the Two-Face episode?
Yeah, where the lighting hit her certain ways in the restaurant, and she was smoking hot. And then the lighting changed, and she was like, horrible, I'm that guy right now. So awesome. Everybody have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And remember, if you got questions, you got issues, go to the discussion board, throw them up, DM Mike, DM me. Let us know what your concern is. We'll try to make an issue of it. We'll make an episode out of your problems. So we'll see you later. Take care.